lost at the beginning. When they passed away, my mom and my grandma and my dad, it's like I was already, trying to regroup everything, and everything fell apart again. So after my grandpa passed away, my mom passed away, and then my grandma, and now my dad. It's like we're having so many losses. And I have 3 children. We come and we visit them, we clean their plaques, change the flowers, but it's still not, we can't give them the proper answer, why so sudden they passed away. It's hard, especially I was more attached to my dad. They're in our hearts. I always say they're in our hearts, but I like to come and clean and change their flowers. I mean, I just want to say, like, if they're still with us. I know physically they're not here with us, but they're everywhere. They're not just here in the ground, they're everywhere.
Every day, yes. Yes, every day. That was my ritual. Sitting here, either in silence or just talking to him by myself, hoping I hear something, but of course I didn't. The butterflies they fly around me when I'm sitting on this chair right here. It feels good because I feel like, okay, Julian, I feel you. I know you're here. Thank you for that. I needed it. It's like he knows every time I need it. We go through life every day because we have to. We have to wake up. We have to go to work. We have to do our routine. But when you lose someone, it is so hard to do your routine the same way that you used to do. You don't even hear the cars anymore. You don't even hear the honks anymore. You don't even see them. You're really just focused on your pain. You're focused on memories, and especially when I look at the monument and I read it, every time I come, it's like it's brand new. It's like I just saw it for the first time. And then on his marker, we have his face, so I just sit there and just stare at it. Everything seems to just disappear. Because losing a child is a different kind of pain. I've lost a grandmother and it hurts so bad. I lost a best friend. I lost other people in my life. But when I lost my child, that's a pain that there's no name for it. And I can't describe it to anybody unless you've been in that kind of pain.
There is a lot of what's called complicated grief. And the symptoms of complicated grief can be anything from isolation, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse. There's so many symptoms that come from unprocessed healthy grief. And one of the benefits of using rituals is to assist people in placing that grief in a healthy place. And knowing that there are vehicles for me to process my grief in a way that I'm not being judged, or in a way that I am not going to be, or that this person is going to be forgotten. I can remember when my grandmother died that I was basically 18, and she was the mother who had raised me on many levels. And I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any ritual in place. In our family environment, we didn't speak about ofrendas or death. I had met a friend who introduced me to her grandmother, and her grandmother expressed and showed me an ofrenda, and I had no idea what that was. And so she helped me put something like that together, and it really made me feel grounded. It made me feel like I could place my fears and my love for my grandmother somewhere and honor her on a different level, in a way that was concrete for me, not so abstract. The ofrenda usually has 4 meanings: water, wind, earth, and fire. The most important element of the Day of the Dead is building an offering, building an ofrenda, building an altar. What are the thoughts that are coming to you from your ancestors? in developing or making an altar, one needs to gather specific materials, and it really grounds us. And that's what rituals really do. It's an installation. It's basically an art installation that one makes at home. You can put the photo here. You can do whatever you want. Usually it consists of the photo of the deceased. It also consists of specific flowers, copal, specific items that the deceased loved. That's food, drink, any clothing, any memorabilia that is going to hopefully bring the deceased back for that 1 or 2 days and make them feel part of the living again. That's the whole point of the ofrenda or the altar. The whole idea in my research, in my current research, is to show or to amplify the fact that the ofrenda has its own purpose. So by using a process that was made popular by Carl Jung, which is called active imagination, one can stimulate basic instincts that we have somewhat lost over time. These instincts are going to help connect us to the unconscious. The unconscious is where a lot of material lives that we just aren't very familiar with. We've lost that connection. It's been severed over time. One of the pathways by connecting to the unconscious is something called active imagination. When I'm working with my participants, my clients, I use active imagination to help them connect to a deeper sense of the unconscious. The ofrenda can then become almost alive. The ofrenda can become the vehicle where one can talk to the ancestors, one can listen to what stimulation is trying to be transmitted, and in that hope, in that pathway is where there can be some healing. You have all the elements, the little meanings, and so that's going to be there to help you with that aha moment.
We are celebrating death in a way, you know. We have, you know, the colorful skulls and the bright colors, and it's putting death under a different lens. And you can really feel the emotion in the workroom today.
How does the art making process of the ofrenda ritual provide you, us, a deeper relationship with death? Just going way deep. And so it is in that unconsciousness where we can begin to find relationship with death. We can go very deep. And Jung, Carl Jung again, mentions this as growing beyond oneself.
My son was 30 years old, my husband was 57. Death is a part of life. And I had a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, tell me, he said, listen, people get it confused because we always say that, you know, death is unpredictable, you never know. He said, but they got it twisted. Life is unpredictable, you never know. Death is predictable, down to the last flower. Everyone has to pass this way, and it's about how we deal with it.
I'm honoring my dad. He has Alzheimer's. As a boy, my parents split up. So I had not always had the best feelings about my dad. My intention coming here was to do sort of like a radical forgiveness, because I know the time will come when he won't be here physically, even though he doesn't remember me anymore. But I thought how heavy that is to carry all that stuff from when I really didn't understand.
It is in this offering, which means ofrenda, an offering to the gods that was given back in the Aztecs' time. The ritual of honoring the dead and the gods was kind of synonymous. There was the goddess of death, and the ancient Aztecs truly understood that there was a place called the underworld, and in their terms it was noted as Mictlan. So the Aztecs understood that the deceased would have to travel to Mictlan, or the underworld, and there is where they would stay for quite some time. And it became known that over time, these ancestors, these deceased, could come back and visit the living. So this transcended over time in the Mexican culture to then start the ofrenda process of offering to the ancestors, offerings made to the deceased in hopes that they would come back for a 1 or 2 day visit to the living. In our Western culture, death is very sterile. We tend to step back from the meaning and the celebration or the process of this rite of passage. It can be a very lonely experience, and I believe that these lonely experiences then turn into death anxiety, stressors, and very complicated forms of grief that can make someone stuck. So we're still offering and making offerings to the gods, the death gods, but we're doing it through the vehicle of this ofrenda ritual, and by welcoming the dead back into our life, it's a transformational process, and understanding that this dead person is now living in me in different ways. And that's the symbolic elements that we put into the ofrenda, whether it's their photos or the bread or their favorite food and drink. It's really honoring the one that's deceased, but it's also bringing them to life for that moment. So when they are now describing the ofrenda, that in itself is transformational, that they're able to speak about it in a different modality. The fact that they come to actually this type of event and they're stepping outside of themselves shows that they want to show, or they want to express it in a different way. How do you think this whole experience for you brought you closer to understanding death?
Before I even came and got here, I was grieving. I would go to, I'd come every day. I would cry, not of, like guilt, but I would feel emotional, like why? Why did my mom die? Why did my dad pass away? Why? I always said that, like, why, life is not fair. But I said to myself, when I wrote this poem right here, World's Best Dad, since the day you passed away, everything feels different way. Your mission is complete. And then I made like a road, eternal life. So it means their mission is complete. They gained their wings.
They first came in and they all had complicated grief. They had met that criteria. Several of the participants had not spoken about the deceased, Before, they were very private in their grieving. They had shared with me that that was something they just didn't feel comfortable with. But as we noted towards the end, they were very open about their process, about the healing that had taken place. What stage of grief do you feel you're in?
Acceptance right now. I understand he's no longer here, and I'm accepting that now, not 100%, but I'm in the beginning stages of accepting it.
It's more open for them. Is there any particular elements that you gravitated towards, or that you're really you like the meaning behind it, and why?
Well, when I understood the papel, picado, that stood out. The flowers, of course, the marigolds, that stood out as well too. I love this because I was taught, and what I think of and know about are that we're all yet vapors. So we're not here long. And when you think about vapors, they just kind of run through and then they're gone. But they leave behind something. And so that's where the incense that we had, that scent, I just combined the two, because you have that scent of their spirit in you already, and the winds, and it's just I guess just the flow of spirits and souls, just because they're always with you, no matter what.
Well, what I have witnessed is the excitement of gathering art materials, building the altar. They're now speaking about them in a very loving and lighthearted manner, and oftentimes through shedded tears. And so with those shedded tears, there is a healing process.
For me, I was able to say, you know what, broken home or not, it is what it is, and I can still love him no matter what. So that's the radical forgiveness part. It's emotional, creative, tactile, and while you're doing it, you're thinking all those things. And I noticed in our workshop, we were all very quiet when we were doing what we did. We were all extremely focused, but at the same time, so that's the intimate part, at the same time, I felt all of us were working toward the same goal. And so there was a connection that wasn't spoken, but I could feel it. It was there.
The participants collectively felt their own pain and each other's pain, and were very vulnerable. I think that's part of the ritual. It's a collective. The ofrenda becomes the archetype. It's in the collective unconsciousness. What that means is that everyone will feel this sense of what's transpired during this process. When one goes through any kind of ritual, whether it's a funeral that we're all engaged in, we all feel that same sense of connectiveness.
Before just seeing an ofrenda, thought, oh nice, it's colorful, the picture of a loved one's there and their goodies are there, okay, I get it, but I didn't really get it. So taking your class really helped me to understand it and helps me to move on more. You stay closed in a situation like this. You really don't know who to talk to or what to say, and like she said, I have kids too. You don't tell your kids everything. And so talking to other adults that know what I'm going through really helps. So last night I was able to sleep good, sleep so much better because of this group.
It gave me a different understanding of death through the ritual. And it goes into depth as far as like the scents, the flowers, the papel, all those different things had a certain meaning. And so it just gave me a better understanding of death when it came from that perspective. Because personally for me, death is never the end. We just move from one place to another. We set our time here. I've always felt like that. It's a process that we have to go through, and we just go from one realm to another.
That's right.
It. And I always say that other realm is so much better than it is here, because you release from this stuff. It's wonderful here. I'm not ready to go, I promise you. But I know that when I leave, I'm looking for something better.
Good. I'm realizing that every time I work with somebody who is grieving or is participating in the Ofrenda ritual, that is a grieving and healing process for me as well. I have photos, of course, of my parents who are deceased, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and my great-great-grandparents. I feel that by having all my ancestors here, that I am honoring them and they are providing some strength for me as well. I am very clear that whatever successes I have in my life, it's because I have been standing on their shoulders. They have paved the way for me in the past.